it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. My hometown was erased from every map in 2010 by Alias Reads. Most of you have never heard of Craigley, Illinois. There's a good reason for that. After the fall of 2010, the government had scrubbed it from every map in circulation. If you dig up an old highway atlas from before 2011, you might spot it in the northeast corner. Craigley wasn't special. The most exciting thing to do was hit the river on a Friday night with your friends to catch snakes and frogs. We had one convenience store, Auntie May's, and a handful of bars where our parents drank with the same tired people they'd known their whole lives. It was a perfectly forgettable place. I remember that final week clearer than any other. Not only because I now know something was coming, but it was also just one of those stretches of time where the air feels thick with detail. Late September. The cornfields had just started to brown and the days were still warm enough to trick you into thinking summer hadn't left yet. The cicadas were in full bloom, buzzing ceaselessly every evening. Some people hate the way they sound, but I find them comforting. Me and my two best friends, Jeremy and Connor, were dead set on building a treehouse in the patch of woods behind Connor's uncle's place. We were 13 and believed we were due for some kind of rite of passage. We also needed somewhere to hide the dirty magazine Jeremy had found in his older brother's room. We hauled up wood pallets from the old dump, scavenged nails from my dad's shed, and even borrowed a rusty handsaw from Jeremy's garage. Every afternoon after school, we raced our bikes down gravel roads, dodging potholes and kicking up dust clouds, just to get back out there and hammer boards into something vaguely treehouse-shaped. Well, looks like a death trap now, but back then it was the best thing we'd ever seen. I can still hear Connor's laugh, his high-pitched, wheezy bark that echoed through the trees, and Jeremy, who always pretended to be braver than he really was, making us swear up and down he would stay the night in the treehouse once it was finished. Spoiler, we never did. Well, they never did. That Friday, we all chipped in for gas station pizza and grape soda and camped out on the floor of Connor's basement. We stayed up late playing Halo and eating stale Halloween candy from the last year that Jeremy insisted was still good. Most of it was hard as a rock, but a few things kept rather well. It was the last normal week I ever had. Not perfect, just normal. School was out, home was a mix of nagging chores and microwave dinners. But those last few afternoons with my friends still live somewhere in me, like an old cassette tape that only plays when I'm too tired or too drunk or can't sleep. We had no idea we were living in the last quiet moments Craigley would ever see. The first thing I remember being off was the cicadas. They stopped buzzing, just like that. On Monday, I was walking home alone after having Jeremy scrape some glue off his jeans. Long story. And I realized it was quiet. Not silent, not dead. Just missing something. That someone had turned the volume down on the town. Well, the crickets were still doing their thing, and the wind still ran through the corn. But there weren't any cicadas. Not a single buzz. I stood in my driveway and stared up at the tree line, half expecting to see a swarm of the little bastards, but nothing. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured maybe a storm was coming and they tucked in somewhere safe for the night. But in hindsight, that was the first thread pulling loose. The next one came on Tuesday, and it was even easier to ignore. Connor's dog, Rigsby, started acting weird. He was an old blue heeler, half blind and meaner than the devil, but he usually kept to himself unless you got too close to his food bowl. That afternoon, though, he wouldn't stop barking at the woods. Just sat at the edge of the backyard, tail stiff, ears forward, heckles up. He didn't move for hours, not even when Connor's mom threw a slipper at him from the porch. When I asked about it, Connor just shrugged and said maybe a raccoon got in the trash. But I knew that bark. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was knowledge born from empathy. Whatever the reason, I knew it wasn't angry. It was nervous. Like he saw something out there he didn't understand. That night the cicadas didn't come back. And the air felt too open without them, too raw. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, but that's the thing about Craigley. You get used to the way things should sound. A summer night should hum, should crackle with bugs and frogs and someone's TV running way too loud across the road. And that Tuesday night, it's just the wind and the occasional creak of the house settling, nothing else. I remember lying in bed with the window cracked open, listening, waiting, hoping to hear that high, dry buzz pick back up. But it never did. I just heard the breeze blow past the house, rustling the leaves of the trees in my yard. On Wednesday, Mr. Danner didn't show up to teach shop class. Now, that man hadn't missed a day in 20 years. The whole school used to joke that he was welded to his chair. Principal Hernandez said he came down with something and would be out the rest of the week. That wouldn't be the last time we heard those words. Came down with something. Jeremy leaned over and whispered that he bet Mr. Danner got butt worms from eating at that weird diner out by the highway. I laughed at the time, we all did. But the truth is, nobody ever saw Mr. Danner again. Well, Jeremy, Connor, and I had been inseparable since second grade. Not because we were exactly alike, we weren't, but because Craigley didn't give you a lot of options, and the three of us just kind of clicked. Jeremy was a smartass. He had that kind of humor that always got him sent to the principal's office, but never lost him any friends. He was the first one of us to grow armpit hair, and the only one who'd ever kissed a girl, which he reminded us of constantly. Connor was quieter, more careful. He thought things through. Always had a backpack full of random stuff. Duct tape, flashlight, granola bars, even a deck of cards. We used to joke that he was prepping for the end of the world before we even knew what that meant. And me, I guess I was the one in the middle. I never started the ideas, but I helped finish them. I was the one who smoothed things over when Jeremy pushed too far or when Connor started spiraling out about whether his mom would notice we stole another roll of duct tape. We were our own dumb little triangle. If one of us was missing, the shape didn't hold right. That Wednesday after school, we ditched our bikes and just walked the long way home. Gravel stuck in our shoes, the heat lifting off the road in wavy lines. Jeremy tried to tell us this ridiculous story about how his cousin in Springfield said there was a bear sighting in town. I mean, like an actual bear just walking around near the post office. Connor rolled his eyes and kept walking, but I played along. Said we should build traps for it, maybe lure it with the half-eaten gas station burrito Jeremy still had in his backpack. We ended up back at the tree house, though. It still wasn't finished, missing a wall and no roof, but we sat up there anyway. Legs dangling off the edge, watching the sun go down over the corn. Someone had brought a radio when we passed it around, tuning through static and snippets of country songs and commercials. For a moment, it felt like we were suspended in amber. That sweet, dumb kind of moment you don't realize is important until it's already behind you. We didn't talk about the missing cicadas, or Mr. Danner, or Rigsby growling out at the woods. No, we just sat there together while the sun painted everything gold and the sky faded from orange to violet. And for the last time in my life, everything felt right. Jeremy's house was on the far end of town, so his mom drove us all the way back once the sun dipped past the tree line. She had one of those old minivans where the sliding door stuck and made a noise like a dying goat when it opened. Connor lived out past the silos, so he got dropped off first. I was last, like always. My place sat just a few streets off the highway, tucked between two empty lots full of weeds and rusted-out junk someone probably meant to haul away 20 years ago. Mrs. Vicks waved at me through the mirror, told me to say hi to my mum, and then peeled off with her headlights bouncing along the road ahead. I stood in the gravel driveway for a second, watching the van disappear down the street, and then turned and walked inside. The front door was cracked open, and the screen creaked when I pushed through. I could hear my parents talking in the kitchen, not arguing, but not casual either. That low, stiff tone adults use when they don't want kids to hear. I stopped just inside the hallway and leaned against the wall, just out of sight. Not just him, my dad was saying. They found something near the river too. Coyote, I think. But it was torn up. Not like a car hit it. More like it exploded. My mum's voice came next, quiet and uneasy. So, what are they saying? That it's a person doing this? Well, I don't know. Could be animals acting weird. Could be kids. Mr. Danner's wife said he was bleeding from the nose the night before he went missing. Just sitting at the kitchen table with a puddle under his... He stopped. I must have shifted, or maybe the floorboard creaked because my mum suddenly called out, "Honey, is that you?" I stepped round the corner and tried to act casual. "Yeah, just got back." They both looked at me a little too directly. My dad cleared his throat and opened the fridge, like nothing had happened. My mum's smile flicked on like a light switch then. "Oh, we saved you a plate," she said. "Spaghetti and beans." Dinner was quiet. My dad kept checking his phone like he was waiting for something, and my mum asked me how my day was with the kind of bright voice people only use when they're trying to steer you away from something else. I told her it was good. I didn't mention the cicadas, or Rigsby, or the way Connor stared into the trees like he was trying to read something written in the dark. I took my plate to the sink, rinsed it off, and headed to the bathroom. The house felt heavier than usual. Not quiet exactly, but dense. I brushed my teeth and then headed to bed without turning on the TV. I left the window cracked again, still hoping maybe the bugs would come back. Maybe something would return to normal. But that night, a new sound found its way through my window. Knowing what I know now, I still get a shiver up my spine when I think about it. At the time, it was just a rhythmic, harsh whistling, faint and distant, fading in and out. It reminded me of rusted metal shifting in the wind. Not loud, but steady. I figured my dad must have knocked something over while doing yard work. Maybe an old ladder or a scrap of tin brushing against the fence. It didn't stop for a long time, but the rhythm was soothing in the absence of the cicadas. I woke up the next morning to the sound of quiet voices. They weren't angry, just hushed. The kind of talking people do when they think you're still asleep and don't want you to hear what they're saying. I sat up in bed and blinked against the coming light through the curtains. My room felt stale, like the air hadn't moved all night. I could faintly hear that metallic whistling sound from the night before, though it was softer now, buried under the stillness of morning. I stepped into the hallway, the floor cool under my feet. The voices came from the kitchen. I slowed down when I reached the edge of the doorway. My mom was sitting at the table, leaning forward with her elbows on her knees and the towel pressed to her face. My dad stood behind her, phone in one hand, car keys in the other. And then my mom looked up, and I stopped cold. God, her eyes were bloodshot. They were so red they barely looked real. The whites were laced with angry veins and darker around the edges. Her sky-blue eyes cast a stark contrast. The towel she held had a smear of something dull and reddish-brown. Well, she tried to smile, but it just made her look worse. "Mom?" I asked. "What happened?" She lowered the towel a little and waved me off. "Oh, nothing, sweetheart. Just some kind of reaction, probably allergies. Your dad's taking me to get it checked out." "Fairfield," my dad added, "just to be safe. You got better equipment there. I already called Jeremy's mom. She's coming to pick you up. You'll stay at her place for the day." Fairfield was a few towns over. We never went there unless it was something serious. "Why not the clinic here?" I asked. He hesitated just for a second. "They're, short-staffed." I nodded slowly. I didn't believe them, but I didn't know what to say either. My mum just reached out and gave my hand a quick squeeze. Her fingers were damp and cold. "We'll be back before dinner," she said. "You be good, okay?" I watched them leave. The screen door gave a tired creak as it swung shut behind them, and a moment later the car eased out of the driveway and disappeared past the neighbor's mailbox. Once they were gone, the house felt different. Bigger, but not in a good way. Like it was holding its breath. I didn't want to move. I sank into the couch, listening for the sound of Jeremy's mom pulling in. Part of me thought about going out back to check on whatever had been making that noise all night. Well, I almost did. I even stood up and started toward the back door. But then I stopped. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a gut-deep instinct that keeps you from putting your hand on a hot stove. You don't have to think about it, your body just knows. The sound was still out there, soft and strange. Something like a slow whistle dragging in and out, almost like someone with asthma breathing through metal straws. Well, I stared at the fence line for what felt like forever, waiting for something to move behind it. But nothing did. By the time Jeremy's mom pulled it back into the driveway, the noise was gone. She knocked once, but didn't wait for me to open the door before letting herself in. "Hey there, kiddo," she said, keys still in her hand. "You all packed?" I wasn't ready, not really, but I nodded anyway. Grabbed a backpack from the hook by the door and threw in the basics. Toothbrush, clean shirt and jeans, phone charger. It didn't take much else. Felt like the kind of trip where you don't need much, or maybe like bringing more would have made it real in a way I didn't want it to be. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house. The screen door bounced against the frame and settled shut, just visible in the rearview mirror. I found myself thinking about that sound again, that eerie, rusty whistle from the night before, the way it dragged through the quiet, clawing for attention. I told myself I'd check it out later once the others were around. Safety in numbers and whatnot. Part 2. The ride to Jeremy's place was quiet. His mum kept the radio off, which wasn't like her. She usually had it tuned to classic rock or some morning talk show, even if no one was really listening. But this time, it was just the steady hum of the engine and a soft rattle coming from something in the trunk. I stared out the window as the streets of Craigley slid past. Same roads, same signs, same trimmed hedges, but none of it felt normal. The town looked like it was holding something in. At the gas station, a guy rushed out of the store with a paper towel clamped to his nose, a dark spot blooming through it. He climbed into his truck fast, leaving the door hanging open until he yanked it shut with enough force to shake his vehicle. A few blocks later, we passed 2 women standing at the edge of their driveway, arms crossed tight against their chests. One of them kept glancing over her shoulder at the house, like she was worried about something inside. Then a car came tearing around the corner up ahead, took it too fast and kicked gravel across the road. Fishtailed for a second before straightening out. Jeremy's mom had to pull off the road and into someone's lawn to avoid them, then muttered something I didn't catch, but she didn't slow down. I didn't say a word, just kept watching the houses roll by. Yards I would cut through, porches where I'd sat drinking lemonade earlier in the summer. Everything looked smaller somehow, sealed up. Windows shut tight, curtains drawn like they were trying to block out more than just sunlight. I kept trying to convince myself it was just a weird day. Maybe the heat was getting to people. Maybe the news about Mr. Danner had started spreading and it spooked the whole neighborhood. But deep down I knew it wasn't that at all. Not all of it. Something was wrong, and it was starting to show. Jeremy's house was one of those older split levels that always smelled faintly like old carpet and pizza rolls. I'd been there 100 times before, but walking in that morning felt different. Not bad, just off. Like when your friend gets a haircut and you can't figure out what changed until hours later. Connor was already there, sprawled across the living room floor with a controller in his hand and a half-eaten bag of chips beside him. He looked up when I walked in. Hey, I said. "How'd you get here so early?" He shrugged, warped. I gave Jeremy a look, and he just shook his head. His parents are fighting again. Guess he left the house around 6. Well, that tracked. Connor's parents weren't exactly known for stability. Most days, if he wasn't at my place, he was here. Jeremy's mom never seemed to mind, and neither did mine. We all just kind of adopted him without saying it out loud. I dropped my bag near the couch and sat beside him. He handed me a second controller without asking. For a while, things felt normal. Just the 3 of us hunched over a busted-up Xbox, shooting aliens and talking trash. Jeremy's mum brought in toaster waffles and orange juice and then left us alone, probably grateful to have something ordinary happening in her house. But even in that moment, the tension didn't really leave. It hung there quiet and invisible, like static in the air. Connor didn't laugh as much as usual, and Jeremy kept checking his phone, a nervous tick he used to have. And every so often I caught myself listening, not to them, but for that sound again, that low metallic whistle. But here, inside Jeremy's house, all I could hear was the TV. We'd been playing for a while, not really talking. The game was just something to do while our parents were busy. None of us had the energy to trash talk like usual. At some point I said, "There was a weird sound outside my house, my window last night." Jeremy didn't look up. "What kind of sound?" I shrugged. "Hard to explain. Like metal scraping really slow. Came and went for hours." Well, that got Connor's attention. He glanced over from the floor. "Like, someone dragging something?" "Sort of," I said. "Wasn't loud, just steady. Thought it might have been the wind, but I don't know. It felt off." Jeremy finally paused the game and tossed his controller onto the couch. "Hey, did you look?" "No," I said. "I thought about it, but it was late. Figured we'd check it out today." Connor was already sitting up at this point. "Hey, you want to go now?" Jeremy grinned. "Why not? It's not like we're doing anything else." "Yeah, I guess," I said. "That's probably nothing." Connor stood and stretched. "Even if it's nothing, I want to see where it came from. You never know, it might be a raccoon nest or buried treasure." Jeremy grabbed a hoodie from the armrest. "Ooh, or a body." I rolled my eyes, but I was already heading for the door. We cut through the back lot behind Jeremy's house, crossed over the gravel stretch behind the old VFW hall, and started heading toward my place. It was a familiar route. We'd taken it countless times before, usually in the summer when we were killing time or looking for something dumb to get into. But today felt different. Not dangerous, but, well. Halfway down Walnut Street, we passed a house with a sedan parked dead in the middle of the front lawn. No one was around. No one in the driver's seat, no one on the porch. The car door was shut and the windshield had a thin film of dust or pollen. Connor slowed his steps as we passed. "That wasn't there this morning. Wonder why they parked there." "Don't know," I said. "That's the Clarkson's place, right?" "Yeah, I think so," Jeremy said. We kept walking. Around the next corner, an empty stroller sat tipped on its side in the front yard of a duplex. No baby, no toys. Just sitting there, half in the weeds. The house behind it had the curtains drawn, and one of the windows was open, even though the air outside was sticky and still and the AC was running full tilt next to the window. "Well, everyone's having a weird morning," Jeremy said. And then we saw the man running. He came sprinting across a side street about half a block ahead of us. Full speed, arms pumping, head down. He didn't look at us, didn't slow, just barreled out from behind a row of houses and disappeared into the trees behind the municipal pool. No shirt, no shoes, just dark jeans and something smeared across his chest. None of us said anything right away. We just watched him go. After a few seconds, Connor said, "Hey, you think he's okay?" "Don't know," I said. "I don't think he saw us either." We walked the rest of the way in tense silence. My house came into view a few minutes later, sitting quiet between the empty lots. Same sun-bleached siding, same cracked sidewalk, same sagging porch, same patch of crabgrass near the hose reel, same old sun-faded wind chime that never really caught the wind. But something about it felt wrong, like walking into a room just after someone had argued in it. I wasn't the only one who felt it either. Connor slowed to a stop beside me. Jeremy stuffed his hands in his hoodie pocket and shifted his weight, looking everywhere except the house. None of us said anything for a few seconds. Then I broke the silence. The sound wasn't out front, it was in the backyard, right outside my window. Jeremy glanced at me. You sure it wasn't just the air conditioner? The unease obvious in his tone. It didn't sound like that, I said. It moved, like back and forth, real slow. Connor gave a small nod. Well, let's check it out then. We cut across the yard. The grass hadn't been mowed in a while, and the dandelions brushed against our legs as we walked. I remember wanting to make a wish on one, but I was too anxious at the time. The gate leaned inward and let out a dry squeak when I pushed it open. Back there, the air felt heavier. Still, like all the sand had been soaked up by the ground. Then we heard it. Faint but clear, just like before. That slow, dragging whistle. Metal against metal. It came in pulses, like something shifting back and forth, just beyond the fence line. Not loud, not fast, but steady and rhythmic. We froze. "There it is," I whispered. Connor turned his head toward it, brow furrowed. Jeremy didn't say anything, though. He just stared toward the back corner of the yard, his mouth slightly open. About 15 feet from my bedroom window, half hidden behind the shed and tangled in honeysuckle, was a pile of scrap I didn't recognize. It looked like junk, rusted pipes, a broken lawn chair, a dented toolbox with the lid sagging off, bent facing coiled along the base like a rib cage, and something that might have once been a wheelbarrow leaned sideways on top, casting a warped shadow in the grass. It didn't look dangerous, just ordinary. But the sound was coming from there. That same slow, steady whistle in and out. Not quite like wind, not quite like breath. Something hollow and wrong, like air being pushed through a broken instrument. Connor stepped forward, squinting at the heap. "You sure this wasn't here before?" "I'd remember," I said. Jeremy crouched, picked up a rock, then didn't throw it. Just turned it over in his hand like he needed something solid to hold on to. "Maybe your dad dumped it." "He doesn't dump junk," I said. "If it's not worth anything, he hauls it out to the scrapyard." Connor edged closer, hands still in his pockets. "It looks like it's been sitting a while. Grass is growing through it." He was right. Dry, sun-bleached blades curled up between the gaps in the scrap like it had been there for days. But it hadn't. It couldn't have. Not this close to my window. Not with the sound starting just last night. "Well, let's just look," I said. "No touching." We crept in. 5 feet, maybe less. Well, the whistle didn't stop. Then something shifted. Not in the metal, but in us. Like the air changed pressure. Like we'd stepped into a room we weren't supposed to be in. That prickling sensation down the back of your neck, low and ancient, like every part of you knows to leave before your mind catches up. The sound kept going. Inhale, pause, exhale. That thin, wheezing whistle, almost wet. Connor crouched near a flattened fence post and scanned the edges. "I don't see anything moving," he said, but his voice was tight like he was forcing it through a throat gone dry. Jeremy didn't speak. His jaw was clenched, his hands were fists. Took another step forward, then one more. Ugh, the smell hit me. It wasn't strong, but just sharp enough to notice. Like old pennies left out in the sun. That metallic sweetness you only get when you're around blood. "Oh, this doesn't feel right," I said quietly. Connor straightened up. "Yeah," he murmured. "It really doesn't." Nothing in the pile moved. Nothing breathed. But the longer we stood there, the louder that whistle seemed. Not in sound, but in presence. Like it wasn't near us anymore, but more like it had circled around and was standing behind us. Then the wheelbarrow shell slipped. Toppled sideways with a rusted screech. Crashing down onto the lawn with a heavy clang. All three of us jumped. Jeremy cursed under his breath. Connor took a full step back. The sound rang out across the yard, sharp and unforgiving. And the pile remained, but now broken up. A tangle of wire and pipe peeled away just enough to show us what was inside, and to our utter horror, we saw the twisted and blood-slicked body of Mr. Danner, folded in the middle of the heap like someone had packed him there and didn't care if he broke. His arms hung limp at his sides. One leg was bent beneath him at an angle that didn't make sense. His skin was wet with blood and something darker, thicker, seeping out of gashes and pulsing beneath his skin like trapped worms. His shirt was shredded and soaked. Rust flaked off him like it was part of him now. One shoe was gone. And he was breathing. That awful, rattling whistle. It was coming from him. His chest hitched. The whistling stuttered, and then it broke into a shriek so wet and high it sounded like metal being peeled apart with bare hands. It echoed off the shed and scattered across the yard like shrapnel. And then he lunged. His whole body jerked forward, too fast and loose, like his limbs weren't entirely under his control, like something was pulling the pieces of him along for the ride. It reminded me of an octopus looking back on it. The scrap pile collapsed behind him as he burst out of it, flinging blood, rust, and wire. And for one horrible second I thought he was going to reach us. But his foot slipped, vanished under him in the mess of oily blood and vines, and he crashed sideways into the dirt. His arm whipped out as he fell, and a thick streak of blood snapped across the grass in a dark Icarus arc. The blood hit Connor and splattered across his jeans. It was dark, almost black, and something about it was inherently wrong. It seemed too thick, too still, like it shouldn't be there. It soaked into the fabric slowly, sticking to the denim. Connor screamed and scrambled backward on his hands. Jeremy was already running, eyes wide, breath caught in his throat. I grabbed Connor's wrist and hauled him upright, and then the three of us were moving. No plan, no direction, just pure animal panic. Behind us, Mr. Danner thrashed in the mess of metal and weeds, choking on every breath, clawing at the earth like he was trying to tear his way out of himself. Oh, that sound, wet and ragged, chased us across the yard. And we didn't look back. Our feet pounded the grass, breaths roared in our ears. The world tilted, warped, like something had cracked open and let the dark spill through. None of us spoke. We just ran. My legs kept moving, but I stopped feeling them. I heard Connor stumbling behind me, wheezing. Jeremy tore ahead, fast and frantic, a rabbit loose in an open field. The yards blurred. Colors bled into each other. Trees and fences lost their shapes. My arms felt distant, weightless, like I wasn't running anymore. Felt like something had hooked into me and was dragging me forward. I don't remember opening the gate, only the slam of it behind us, the sharp clap of wood against wood. No one said a word. Breath was all we had, sharp and jagged, scraping up our throats like it didn't belong there. We didn't stop till we were halfway down the block. Jeremy finally dropped to his knees on someone's lawn, gasping and clutching his chest like his ribs were about to split open. Connor leaned on a mailbox, shaking. I stood in the middle of the sidewalk, heart jackhammering in my chest, vision tunneling at the edges. Jeremy let out this short, awkward bark of a laugh. Did you see that? He wheezed, not looking at either of us. He slipped like a cartoon. No one responded. Connor glanced down at his jeans, at the blood. He rubbed it with his hand like that would do something. It's nothing, he muttered. It's just on me. It didn't get in or anything. I couldn't speak. My tongue felt heavy. My thoughts were backed up behind a wall of static. Jeremy stood up too fast, swayed a little, and then shook it off. We should go back to my place, he said. My mom, she'll know what to do. I nodded, because I didn't know what else to do. None of this felt real. And the sound, God, that sound, was still echoing in my head, even though it had stopped. Jeremy's house was only a few blocks away, but the walk felt longer than it ever had before. Part 3. None of us said anything after the first burst of adrenaline had thinned out. Our steps were uneven. We kept looking at things we didn't need to. Mailboxes, door handles, yard decorations. I remember fixating on a faded plastic flamingo and thinking it looked like it was melting. Jeremy walked ahead, chewing on the string of his hoodie. Connor trailed behind us, still glancing at his leg every few seconds like the blood might have spread or burned a hole through the fabric. I stayed in the middle because it felt safer than being at the front or the back. We passed two parked cars where they shouldn't have been, one up in someone's lawn, another straddling the sidewalk. The second still had its engine ticking quietly, like it had only just been turned off. I stared through the windshield. Keys were in the ignition. Oh, I didn't say anything. When we got to Jeremy's house, the screen door wasn't shut all the way. It just hung there, cracked open, enough to feel wrong. Jeremy hesitated, and halfway out, like he wasn't sure if touching it would shock him. He stepped inside first. "Mom?" he called out. No answer. Oh, the silence was thick. Not just the absence of sound. It was wrong silence, the kind you only notice after something bad has happened, when the normal house noises are missing. No humming fridge, no distant TV, no clatter in the kitchen. Jeremy flicked on the hallway light. It worked, but the bulb buzzed faintly overhead. That tiny noise felt enormous. "Hey, maybe you just went out," I offered, but it didn't sound convincing even to me. Connor hovered by the door, wiping his hands on his shirt. He kept looking around like he didn't know where to stand. "Yeah, I'm just gonna check upstairs," Jeremy said. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He bolted before either of us could say anything, his footsteps thudding up the stairs. I followed Connor into the kitchen. The table was clean, no plates, no open mail, just a half-full glass of water sitting next to a folded newspaper. I could see the faint outline of where a mug had sat before it was picked up. I didn't know what else to do, so I turned on the faucet and grabbed a dish towel from the drawer. I wet it and started wiping the blood off Connor's jeans. He didn't stop me. He just stood there, staring down at his leg, blinking slowly like he wasn't fully inside himself. "I don't think it's yours," I said, dabbing gently at the dark smear. "It's sticky." Connor nodded, just once. "I feel like I'm dreaming," he muttered. I wanted to agree, but I didn't want to lie. It felt too real for dreaming, too textured. Jeremy came back downstairs after a few minutes, moving slower than before. His face was pale. "She's not here," he said. "Her purse is, though." We all just stood there for a moment. The silence had turned into something jagged and alive. Then Jeremy crossed to the fridge and opened it. Didn't grab anything, just stared inside for a long time, his eyes drifting from shelf to shelf like he'd never seen food before. "God, I think I'm going to throw up," he said quietly. And he didn't. I turned away, my eyes catching on a single spot of blood on the floor. Just a drop. Dried, almost brown. My stomach lurched, and suddenly I couldn't stand to be in the kitchen anymore. "Hey, let's go sit down," I said. We drifted into the living room like sleepwalkers, dazed and silent. I sank into the couch without thinking. Jeremy dropped into the recliner and buried his face in his hands, rubbing at his forehead like he was trying to wipe something away. Connor just stood there for a second, staring at nothing, then slid down the wall and sat on the floor, his back pressed to the paint, eyes glassy and far away. For a long time, none of us said anything. Then Jeremy mumbled, "What if he dies?" "Mr. Danner?" Connor asked. I didn't answer. I didn't want to think about Danner or his breathing or the way his eyes had looked at me like he knew. My eyes drifted to the window, half expecting to see someone, something, standing outside. Well, there was nothing. Just the empty street, not even birds. And the quiet stretched out like it was trying to suffocate us. I watched a dust mote drift through a shaft of light coming through the window. Jeremy picked at the seam of the recliner, pulling loose a single thread and wrapping it around his finger again and again. Connor hadn't moved from the floor. He leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. No one had cried yet. I don't think we could. There was too much static buzzing around inside, too much weight pressing in behind our eyes that hadn't figured out how to fall. Eventually, Jeremy broke the silence. "What do we do now?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Then Connor groaned. It was quiet at first, like the kind of sound you make when your stomach cramps. But it didn't stop. He shifted onto his side, curled inward, and clutched his abdomen. "Hey," I said, sliding off the couch. "You good?" Connor didn't respond. His forehead was glistening with sweat and his breaths were shallow and quick. Jeremy moved to crouch beside him. "Hey, what's wrong? You gonna puke?" "I don't know," Connor muttered. "I feel weird, like my skin's too tight." He rubbed at his arms, and his hands were shaking. "Hey, is it the blood?" Jeremy asked, voice a little higher now. "Is that from Dana? You think he was, sick or something?" Connor nodded slowly, like his head was too heavy to move fast. I stood up. "Hey, we need to go." "Where?" Jeremy looked at me, panic creeping in now. "Your house? We just came from there." "No," I said. "Connor's. His parents are always home. They never leave." "Yeah, but they don't even have a—" "I know." I cut him off. "That's why. If anyone's still around, it's them." Jeremy hesitated, then nodded, biting his lip. Connor groaned again, louder this time, and pushed himself unsteadily to his feet. God, his eyes were glassy, and he looked like he might tip over at any moment. I looped an arm around his neck. "Hey, come on. We'll go slow." Jeremy opened the door. The light outside felt too bright after the stale hush of the house. Well, we stepped into it anyway. We didn't run this time, just walked, slow and uneven, like we were carrying something fragile between us and couldn't afford to drop it. The air outside felt staler than ever. Not hot or cold, just wrong, like it had been recycled too many times and had lost its edge. Jeremy kept glancing down the street, shoulders twitching at every sudden movement. "God, I hate how quiet it is," he muttered. It wasn't really quiet, though. There were still sounds, just not what we expected. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, high-pitched and frantic, and then silent. We passed an open car door, swinging slightly on its hinge like someone had left in a hurry. The engine was still clicking as it cooled, and there were groceries spilled onto the curb. A carton of eggs had cracked open across the sidewalk, the yolks drying in the sun. Further down the block, a man stood in his front yard. He wasn't doing anything, just standing, still as a scarecrow, facing the road, mouth slightly open. His shirt was soaked through with sweat or water or maybe something else, and a long scrape stretched down the side of his face like he'd tripped and never cleaned it. Jeremy slowed when we saw him. "Hey, should we, No," I said, already steering Connor away. We crossed to the other side of the street. 3 houses down, a kid our age was curled up on the porch of his house, rocking back and forth. He was muttering something into his knees. His fingers were bloody, knuckles raw. None of us said a word. Just past him, another figure stumbled across a driveway, fast and erratic. A woman this time, maybe in her 40s, barefoot, clutching a broken broom handle. She was swinging at nothing. Her arms were covered in red lines, like she'd run through thorns. And she kept yelling the same word over and over. "Stay, stay, stay, stay." Jeremy grabbed my arm. "They're sick. They're all sick." Connor let out a low, strained noise like he was trying not to vomit. We turned down the next block, picking up speed without saying so. When we finally saw Connor's house, I almost cried. Not because I was glad to be there, just because it was there, still standing, still normal. Curtains drawn, screen door shut, no broken windows. "I think I'm going to be sick," Connor said again, slumping against my shoulder. Jeremy ran up the steps and knocked on the door. A bit too fast, a bit too hard. "Mr. Doyle," he called. "It's us. It's Connor. Can we come in?" No answer. He knocked again. "Mrs. Doyle." Still nothing. I looked at Connor, and his lips were pale. Sweat soaked the collar of his shirt. His hand was pressed tight to his stomach, like something inside was moving. Then the screen door creaked open with a light push, groaning just enough to make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Inside the house was dark. No lamps, no hallway light, nothing. But the TV was on. Its pale glow flickered across the living room, casting shaky shadows on the walls. And something was playing. I couldn't tell what at first, just the low murmur of dialogue and the shifting of images, like the remnants of a life still going through the motions even after everyone else had left. Jeremy rattled the doorknob again, harder this time. God, it's locked. Of course it is, I muttered, trying not to let panic bleed into my voice. Let's check the back. We helped Connor down the porch steps, one of us on each side, practically carrying him now. God, he was burning up, sweat through his shirt, mumbling to himself in broken pieces that I couldn't quite catch. His legs weren't working right. He wasn't walking so much as dragging along behind us, stumbling in rhythm with our steps. The gate to the backyard creaked open and the hinges moaned. Everything back there looked unsettlingly normal. 2 lawn chairs sat facing the garden untouched. A brittle plastic kiddie pool lay flipped over in the grass. The grill cover flapped against the wind, snapping faintly. The hose was coiled like a sleeping snake on its mount. Nothing broken, nothing strange. Everything was just wrong, like walking into a photo of a place instead of the place itself. Jeremy rushed up the sliding door and pulled hard. Yeah, it's locked too, he said, stepping back with a frustrated breath. Before I could answer, Connor let out a harsh, gagging sound and collapsed to his knees in the yard. I turned just in time to see the blood spill from his mouth. Thick, dark, and sudden, it splattered the grass in wet ropes, steaming slightly in the sun. He heaved again and more came, drenching the front of his shirt, dribbling down his chin. The grass around him was soaked in seconds. Jeremy stumbled back a few steps, hands over his mouth. Oh God, what the hell? I dropped beside Connor, knees hitting the dirt, heart pounding like it was trying to crack my ribs from the inside. Connor, I said, grabbing his shoulder. Connor, look at me. His head turned slowly, like it weighed too much for him to move, and his eyes locked onto mine. Oh, they were marbled red, burst blood vessels staining every inch of white like shattered glass under skin. They shimmered wetly in the light, glass even broken, and so full of something that looked like grief it made my stomach twist. His bottom lip started to quiver, and then he broke. The sobs hit all at once, loud, guttural, uncontrollable. He dropped his head and screamed into the dirt, fists pounding the ground so hard I thought he'd break his knuckles. His cries weren't soft or human-sounding. No, they ripped out of him, raw and cracked and full of something too big for any of us to hold. I don't want to feel like this, he cried. I don't want... He choked on the rest, coughing up blood, the words coming out sticky and wet. Jeremy hovered behind me, wide-eyed and pale, effectively paralyzed. His lips were moving, maybe trying to say something, but no sound came. I didn't know what to do. I just stayed there, my hand on Connor's back as he convulsed and wailed into the grass. All I could think about was my mom's eyes, the way she wouldn't meet mine that morning, the way she'd never said goodbye. And now, this. Connor's crying didn't stop, it just changed, from those deep guttural sobs into something thinner, more ragged. His voice cracked over itself until it wasn't words anymore, just sharp exhalations, panicked and wet. He clutched his stomach and rocked forward, breathing fast through his teeth. I tried to steady him, but he jerked away like my hand was burning him. His eyes were wild now, red-rimmed, twitching, like he was trying to focus but couldn't get the world to stay still long enough to hold on to it. Jeremy crouched down beside me, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. I've got to get him inside. We can call someone. Maybe the TV, maybe there's something on it. News or anything. It's locked, I reminded him. We already tried. Jeremy looked toward the back windows, then toward the fence. Garage, he said. You think it's open? Before I could answer, Connor let out a sharp bark of laughter, sudden and loud. It didn't sound like him. It was too high and strained. He wiped blood from his mouth and smeared it across his cheek like war paint. You didn't hear it, he said. Hear what? Jeremy asked, his voice cracking. Connor turned toward us, face slackening into something oddly peaceful. His breathing had slowed, but not in a good way. It was deliberate now, measured, like he was bracing for something. The muscles in his neck jumped beneath the skin, and a slow tremor moved through his hands. "Oh, don't feel good," he whispered. Then he blinked a few times, slowly, and something about his expression folded in on itself. I took a step back. "Connor," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey man, you still with us?" He didn't answer. He just stared. And then his whole body trembled, tensed, and then he lunged. Part 4. God, it happened so fast. One moment he was on his knees, and the next he was on Jeremy, fists flailing, teeth bared, no words, no warning. I don't think he even knew what he was doing. Jeremy screamed and fell back, arms up to shield his face, but Connor hit hard and wild. His hands clawed at Jeremy. One got tangled in Jeremy's hoodie and yanked his head down hard. "Get off him!" I shouted, grabbing Connor's shirt, but he was stronger than he had any right to be. Then Jeremy did the only thing he could do. He swung. It wasn't a clean hit, just a blind, desperate elbow to the side of Connor's head. It connected with a dull crack. Connor's body went slank. He slumped sideways into the dirt, breathing shallow and quick. Jeremy scrambled back, panting hard, eyes wide with horror. "What the fuck, Connor?" he cried. "Why'd you do that?" I dropped to my knees, reaching for Connor, but stopped myself. I didn't know what I'd do even if I got to him. He was still breathing, but something had changed. His eyes rolled halfway back, his lips twitched. Not a word, not a breath, just that small, involuntary motion like something beneath the skin was still trying to move. A spasm or a signal. Jeremy didn't move at first. He just stared at Connor like he didn't recognize him anymore. His hands were shaking so badly his knuckles kept brushing his knees. I could hear his breathing, sharp, shallow gasps pulled through his teeth like each one hurt. "I hit him," he said softly. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. I watched him instead, watched his mouth work around the words like they were glass shards he had to spit out. "I hit him. I had to. You saw. I didn't know what else to do. He was hurting me." He blinked too hard, like he was trying to force himself awake. "Why did he look like that?" Jeremy's voice cracked. "Why was he laughing?" I reached for his shoulder, but he flinched. There was blood on his sleeve. Connor's. It had smeared down the front of his hoodie during the scuffle. Jeremy looked down at it and froze, mouth slowly opening like a scream was building, but nothing came. Instead, he started wiping at it, frantically, useless swipes that only spread it further. "I don't want this on me," he whispered. "Get it off! Get it off!" He clawed at the zipper, pulling the hoodie halfway off before yanking it over his head and hurling it onto the grass. He stared at it like it might get back up, like Connor's blood might do something. Then he wrapped his arms around himself and hunched forward, knees to chest, rocking slightly like a kid trying to get through a thunderstorm. "I didn't mean to," he said again. "I just wanted him to stop." I crouched beside him and waited, not touching him, just breathing, matching the rhythm of his panic so it wouldn't get any worse. Somewhere nearby, a crow called out. Just once, and then silence again. I glanced back at Connor, who hadn't moved. I don't know how long we sat like that. Me crouched in the grass, Jeremy curled into himself like a broken spring, Connor unconscious in the dirt between us. The wind picked up, brushing leaves through the yard, the kind of wind that carries too much silence with it, a warning you can feel before you understand. I glanced toward the house, instinct more than curiosity. And that's when I saw them. Connor's parents were standing on the back porch, just there, quiet and still. The door was open behind them, hanging off its track. Mrs. Doyle had one bare foot, one slipper. Her nightgown was streaked in red, and the wetness clung to the hem like paint left too long in the rain. Mr. Doyle was worse. His shirt looked soaked through, front to back, the color too dark to guess how much was blood and how much was shadow. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers curled slightly, stained past the wrist. They didn't speak, didn't even blink. They just watched us. Jeremy hadn't noticed yet. His head was buried between his knees, rocking slowly, muttering something to himself that didn't have shape. I wanted to shield him. I wanted to turn him away before he saw, but my body wouldn't move. Mr. Doyle tilted his head just slightly to the side, like he was trying to make sense of us, or maybe deciding something. A fly landed on his cheek and stayed there unbothered. He didn't even flinch. Jeremy finally looked up. His gaze followed mine, slow, heavy. And he saw them and screamed. He scrambled backward so fast he nearly tripped over Connor's legs. I caught him before he hit the ground, but his eyes never left the porch. What the hell? What the hell's wrong with them? He cried. Mrs. Doyle stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough to break the paralysis. Jeremy took off ahead of me, legs pumping hard, feet slipping on the grass, slicked with Connor's blood. I was right behind him. My vision narrowed, tunneled inward, the world a funnel of motion and panic. Behind us, I thought I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow at first, then faster. We crashed through the back gate, tore down the alley between houses, past rusted trash bins and cracked fences. The air was cold against my throat. My lungs felt like they were breathing through gauze. Go, I shouted, or maybe I just thought I did. Jeremy veered left, and I followed without thinking. My legs didn't feel like mine anymore, more like cables being yanked by some frantic puppeteer. Each step hit the pavement too hard and rattled up my spine. Somewhere behind us, I swore I heard the scrape of something heavy dragging across concrete. Jeremy stumbled at the edge of a driveway but caught himself, panting so hard it sounded like he was choking. He looked over his shoulder. Connor! No, I snapped, grabbing his hoodie and yanking him forward. He's gone. His face twisted with something I couldn't name. Not grief, not yet. Too soon for that. It looked more like a child being told his favorite toy was lost forever. Stupid. Gut-deep disbelieving. We reached the street and didn't stop running. The car passed us without slowing, its tires spitting gravel behind it. A door slammed somewhere, a dog barked. God, everything was too loud. Jeremy slowed for a second, his eyes darting toward a narrow path that led toward the woods. The treehouse? He gasped, and I nodded. Yeah, go. We broke ahead again, leading us off the road down the dirt trail we'd ridden 1,000 times on our bikes. But the path felt foreign now without Connor. A shriek erupted behind us, wet, angry, and inhuman, followed by the crack of branches breaking under weight. We didn't look back. Jeremy was 5 paces ahead, then 10. God, he was faster than me, always had been. My legs started to give, my chest burned. I was gasping so loud that every breath burned. All I could hear was breath and the drumbeat of my heart in my skull. And then, something yanked him. He disappeared mid-stride, 1 second there, the next a blur of limbs and sound. I skidded to a halt, nearly tumbling into the brush. Jeremy! There was movement in the undergrowth. A shape, a struggle. His voice cried out in a brief high and panicked wail, and then silence. I knew, on instinct, that Jeremy had died immediately. I don't remember how I got to the treehouse. 1 minute I was running through the brush, branches whipping against my arms, feet sliding in loose dirt. The next I was climbing, hands gripping the rope ladder, legs shaking so badly I nearly missed a rung. The world was a smear of green, and noise, and blood, and I just needed to be somewhere else. The treehouse was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just bigger now. But the second I pulled myself through the trapdoor, I shut it tight and checked the latch, then checked it again, and then again. Wood, rope, nails. It was all still here, everything we'd built. I crawled to the corner, curled into the sleeping bag we'd dragged up there last week. It still smelled like cornfield and old laundry detergent. I pulled it over my head like it might protect me, like the plywood walls could keep the world out. I told myself not to cry, but I failed miserably. Not big gasping sobs, just quiet leaks down my cheeks, dripping into the nylon bag, breathing too fast to stop it. Jeremy, I whispered. Just his name, just to hear it out loud. But the silence that answered was thick, like the whole world had turned its back on me. My eyes darted around the small space. The flashlight, still there in the corner, slightly rusted. A pack of fruit snacks we'd left in a torn backpack. The magazine Jeremy had smuggled up here, crumpled, juvenile, a reminder of how young we really were. I picked up the flashlight and turned it over in my hands. Flicked it on, off, on, off, then held it tight like a lifeline. I pressed my forehead to the floor. Oh, it was sticky with sweat, or tears, or both. Outside, the wind picked up again, but there were no cicadas, no birds, just the creaking of the tree limbs holding me up, cradling me, swaying. I stayed that way for hours, wrapped in old fabric and childhood, shaking in silence, wishing I could unsee what I'd seen, wishing I'd run faster, wishing I'd never come home. At some point I must have fallen asleep. It wasn't restful, more like collapsing inward. That kind of sleep where nothing gets cleaned out, where dreams don't mean anything and the static of memory just loops itself deeper. I think I dreamed about Jeremy, or maybe it was just the sound of his scream echoing over and over until I turned into a dull background hum. When I opened my eyes, it was dark. Not the kind of dusk dark that hums with crickets and the deep blue skies, but real darkness, heavy and oppressive, the sort that makes the air feel like it's pushing against the walls. I blinked at the ceiling, unsure if I'd actually woken up, if I was still trapped somewhere in that static sleep. Then I heard it. Sirens. Faint at first, tangled with the wind, but building. Dozens of them stacked on top of each other like a warning that couldn't decide where to go first. I sat up, my mouth dry and sour, heart already sprinting. The blanket slipped from my shoulders as I fumbled for the flashlight, clicked it on out of instinct and then immediately shut it off. Even that small beam felt like a spotlight. And then the gunfire started. Not chaotic, but sharp, rhythmic and professional. Short bursts like you'd hear in a movie, military. I went rigid, every part of me locking up. Somewhere in the distance, I heard shouting too, voices distorted by panic and distance, commands barked with a kind of certainty that only exists in people trained to control fear. I heard engines choking forward, metal slamming against metal, a landscape unrecognizable in its sound alone. I crawled to the trapdoor and eased it open, just a sliver. Light swept through the trees, not flashlights, floodlights, bright and wide and scanning across the branches like they were searching for ghosts. A helicopter passed overhead, blades pounding the canopy into a storm. Leaves trembled and I held my breath. Then a voice cut through it all, loud, amplified, and close enough to feel. "This is the Illinois National Guard. Stay where you are. Raise your hands and do not approach." The words reached me before their meaning did. I sat there with the trapdoor cracked, stuck in the pause between understanding and action. It was like hearing a sentence in a dream, clear but slow to register. Then came boots, fast, urgent footsteps just beneath me. "Hey, we've got movement in the tree line," someone yelled. I flung the door open then. "Here!" I screamed. "Up here!" 3 beams of light snapped upward at once, catching me in their glare. I squinted and threw an arm across my face. "Hands visible," one of them barked. I raised them fast, trembling. "Please, I'm just a kid." No reply, just action. One soldier climbed up like he'd done it 1,000 times, reached me without hesitation and grabbed my wrist. I didn't resist, didn't cry. Just let him haul me down like I weighed nothing. His gloves were slick with something warm and sticky. Didn't ask what it was. When my feet hit the ground, it felt like stepping into a riot. Radios buzzed and screamed, sirens twisted together in a mechanical wail, and somewhere beyond it all, another scream rang out, high and human and much too close. A house down the hill blew open, windows shattering in a blossom of flame. One soldier dropped a foil blanket over my shoulders. It crinkled with every breath I took, every step I shifted. Another knelt in front of me and shone a flashlight into my eyes. "Name," he said. I stared. "Kid, we need your name." I don't know, my throat felt like gravel. "I do, I just..." He nodded, and his voice softened. "It's okay, you're safe, we've got you." I didn't believe him, not really, but I followed him anyway. Let them guide me past burning homes and shattered glass, past something sprawled across the road that my brain refused to recognize. I walked because I didn't know what else to do. The town of Craigley was on fire, and I was the only one walking out of it. I want to say I was in quarantine for nearly a month after that. Don't remember most of it. Sterile rooms, paper gowns, voices behind glass, questions I couldn't answer, blood tests, light too bright, food without taste. They burned what was left of Craigley. I only know that because someone from some branch of something told me so years later. They said it like a kindness, like it was a good thing. But I still see it when I sleep. The treehouse, the yard, Jeremy, Connor, the sound Mr. Danner made. I tried to go back once, just to the area, but it's all gone now. Even the roads don't go that way anymore. Satellite images show trees, maybe a stream. No sign of town ever sat there. Like someone took a giant eraser to the map. But I know it was real. My body remembers in ways I can't always explain. When cicadas come back in the summer, I find myself listening too closely, hoping to hear them, dreading the silence if they stop. And sometimes on quiet nights, when I leave the window cracked just a little too wide, I swear I can still hear it. That soft, wheezing whistle. So almost in the same vein of these zombie stories I've been doing recently, but not quite. Anyway, government conspiracy stuff, always love that as well. So, yep, thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to say in the comment section below the video, and as always, I will do my best to join in the conversation. So that was again some old footage of mine from back before my GoPro was nicked. Still got quite a few things, and I'm really glad to have not been doing the AI stuff. Quite liked it, quite like, composing bits and stuff and putting it together, but the overwhelming feeling was no, go with your own footage, so that is what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. So, hope you're enjoying that as well. Anything you want to say about that, of course, I'm always open to having a nice discussion about anything to do with the videos I make. Okay, that was a big one. Did that all pretty much in one recording session, so you can tell, I think, because I'm waffling on again. Okay, back again with a podcast tomorrow, and I'll be back again here on Friday night with something similar to this. So, see you all again soon, I hope. Till then, my dear friends, you all sleep well, yeah? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.